Now we are at discussion 4, giving my conclusion. And of course, the answer is yes. Kāyasaṅkhāra, vacī, and cittasaṅkhāra for MN 43 and 44 should refer to the same thing because they are actually making a comparison. In MN 43 is a comparison, in MN 44 is the process of how a bhikkhu attains that cessation of perception and feeling. Initially, I thought that there was a bit of a difference because the kāyasaṅkhāra for a dead body would refer to more than just the breathing, all the bodily formations in the corpse. And of course, cittasaṅkhāra refers to everything happening in the mind. But then, since this is the comparison, they should refer to the same thing. The next two sections, in Ānāpānassati, my understanding is that the kāyasaṅkhāra and cittasaṅkhāra here refer to in-breathing and out-breathing respectively, and feeling and perception. I think that for in-breathing and out-breathing, you could say that it is implied from what is defined in MN 44, rather, and also cittasaṅkhāra as what is defined in MN 44. But as some of you pointed out, cittasaṅkhāra in the context of Ānāpānassati Sutta in the second tetrad could actually mean more of feeling than of perception, because that section is about observing or experiencing piti and happiness. It's probably about tranquilizing that piti and happiness, that rapture and happiness. What is the rationale of my understanding of how this works? If we look at the position of the cittasaṅkhāra and the kāyasaṅkhāra, we can interestingly see that kāyasaṅkhāra is at the end of the first tetrad and cittasaṅkhāra is at the end of the second tetrad. Since many years ago, I've been very confused about the sequence of all these things because I had this idea that it was all linear, that you have to go through step by step from step A to step 16. It means you have to be aware of a long breath and short breath, and then only you experience the whole body, and then you tranquilize the kāyasaṅkhāra before you can move on to experiencing rapture, happiness, and so forth. But then when it comes down to the third tetrad, you see the third tetrad, the third line, is composing the citta. Composing the citta means to focus or make the citta have samadhi. But how can this be down at the bottom there? It's step number 11. When step number 5, experiencing rapture, is already there. You have to compose the mind before you can experience rapture or experience happiness, before you can gladden the mind. But you do all these things first and then you compose your citta later. That sounds a bit odd to me. I was very confused about this for many years, until recently when I first started this Saṅkhāra workshop. In my first Saṅkhāra workshop that was held last year, I had to prepare the slides. While I was preparing the slides, I had this insight into how this thing works. It is actually a mistake to think that this is a linear process. The steps or the various elements of this Ānāpānassati in the Ānāpānassati Sutta are not arranged in order of sequence or progression of practice. They are arranged according to the 4 satipatthanas. The first one is kāya-anupassana, the second is vedana-anupassana, the third is citta-anupassana, and the last one is dhamma-anupassana. This can be found explicitly in that particular sutta, where at the end of the sutta, the Buddha says that anyone who practices Ānāpānassati properly, he or she will be fulfilling the 4 satipatthanas as well as the 7 factors of enlightenment. So what I've done is, after I got this insight to it, I realized that since it is not a linear progression, then I looked at this in terms of to what extent each of these elements can take us, to what extent of samadhi, and when can we apply any of these elements, at what period of time, at what juncture of our practice. Here, I have tabulated it in such a way that on the right are various stages of samadhi and attainments. The first one is the pre-jhanic state. Second is the jhanas. The jhanic states, the four form jhanas, and then the arūpas, the formless attainments. Then you have nirodha samapatti, the cessation of feeling and perception. Finally, nibbana itself. Before I can go on further, I need to explain the difference between jhana and the arūpa. Let us go back to MN 43, which this quotation was not given in your handout. This is a conversation between Āyasmā Aggacitta and Āyasmā Sariputta. Both of them are very well-known disciples of the Buddha who have very analytical knowledge of the Buddha's teachings. Āyasmā Aggacitta was asking Āyasmā Sariputta, what happens when the mind has been purified to such an extent that it goes beyond the five faculties? What does that mean? Release from the five faculties means that you have no more consciousness of what's happening in your five senses. You have gone beyond the five senses. When you go beyond the five senses, what can be known? If you can't experience anything through your five senses, then only you have this mental object in your mind. And that is the base of infinite space, or the base of infinite consciousness, or the base of nothingness. It didn't go on to the fourth arūpa, which is neither perception nor non-perception, because that is too subtle to be actually known. It's like a hazy state, neither here nor there. What this means is that when you're in the jhanas, the five faculties are still there. You're still aware of the five faculties. If you are no longer aware of the five faculties, that means you're in the arūpas. That's why I want to make this clear first before I go on with my explanation. When you are aware of the long breath or short breath, you can do that until the third jhana. Because in the fourth jhana, breathing stops. And all of these 16 exercises were phrased in such a way that you are supposed to be aware of the breath. The first two is the basic exercise. There's one even before that. It's called cittasaṅkhāra. You have to be ever mindful. You breathe in and you breathe out. If you're not mindful, you will know that you're breathing in and breathing out. For example, now you are listening to me intently, trying to understand what I say. You are not aware of your breath. So that's why it's called mindfulness of breathing. The breath is happening all the time. The body is feeling all the time, but the mind is not aware of it because there's no mindfulness. You're not looking back at what the body has experienced. The pre-exercise is you must be mindful. If you're mindful of breathing in and breathing out, then you will know that it's a long breath, that it's a short breath. If you're so intently listening to me, you're not even aware of your breath, how can you know whether it's long or short? Correct? This can be done right from the beginning, even before you reach the first jhana, because it's a pre-jhanic state. This is a preliminary state. You have to be aware of the long breath and short breath. Or rather, you are mindful of your breath, and therefore you come to know that your breath is long or short. From the third exercise onwards, it's all about training. Experiencing the whole body, I shall breathe in and I shall breathe out. Thus, I train myself. I train myself to tranquilize the bodily formations while breathing in and breathing out. This is the whole sequence from then on. It's all about training while you're breathing in and breathing out. You can only do this in respect of the breathing in and breathing out process until the third jhana, because after the third jhana, there's no more breath. Now we're talking about experiencing the whole body. What does the whole body mean? Is the whole body the same as kāyasaṅkhāra, bodily formation? That is a point of controversy among scholars and meditation teachers. Some teachers say that the whole body here means the beginning and middle and end of the breath. Some teachers say that no, it means the whole body, literally the whole body. All the other bodily sensations that are present in your body besides the in-breath and the out-breath. Some teachers even say that it goes beyond that. The whole body means all the five senses. not just the physical bodily sense, but all the five senses. If you are experiencing the whole body while you're breathing in and breathing out, you're training yourself to experience the whole body while you breathe in and breathe out. It's like doing open mindfulness. You're breathing in and breathing out, and you're aware of all the things that are happening around you. You can continue to do this until you get to the third jhana, because after that, you cannot breathe through your nostrils anymore. You tranquilize the kāyasaṅkhāra. Here, understanding kāyasaṅkhāra to mean the in-breath and the out-breath. As you keep on practicing, the breath becomes more and more subtle, more and more subtle. That is how you are tranquilizing it. When you get to the fourth jhana, you've reached your goal. You have already tranquilized the bodily formation. You are no longer tranquilizing it. It's already tranquilized. But because the breath is already tranquilized, it doesn't mean that you cannot experience the whole body. You can still experience the whole body without the breath. Some years ago, one of my yogis, she was doing open awareness or open mindfulness. She was also having breath like a primary object and also being aware of things happening around. And then she reached a stage of her practice where she said that she couldn't feel her breath anymore. Couldn't feel the breath coming in and out of her nostrils because it was so subtle. But she said she could feel breathing in and out at the pores. And then she asked me, is that really possible? How can we breathe through the pores? And this really reminds me of an ancient Chinese Mahayana text, which commented on Ānāpānassati and talks about this, experiencing the whole body. It says that when you're experiencing the whole body, it means that even if your breath cannot be felt at the nostrils, you can still feel breathing at the pores. You are not breathing in and out through the nostrils, but you're breathing in and out through the pores. But it's very subtle. You have to get the deep samadhi to be able to detect and be conscious of that. So even though you cannot feel the breath anymore, you have really tranquilized the breath, you can still feel other subtle parts of the whole body, of the other senses. This is possible even in the fourth jhana, but without watching the breath. So if you see a star anywhere along on these columns, it shows that one can still continue to do the exercise, but without being aware of the breath. This will happen all along in the fourth jhana. If you see a flag, that means you have reached your goal. So experiencing rapture can only be done when you have attained the first jhana. There's no experiencing of rapture in the pre-jhanic state. It only happens when you get into the first jhana. Happiness can only happen from the first to the third jhana. In the first and second jhana, there is happiness connected with the body and mind. In the third jhana, there's no more happiness connected with the body. There's only happiness connected with the mind. You can experience the cittasaṅkhāra, which is Vedana and Sanya. You see here, it's about rapture and happiness in the first two exercises of this tetrad. In the third tetrad, it's more than just experiencing rapture and happiness, because these two are somehow related to Vedana. Because rapture, although is a separate mental state, it is accompanied by pleasant feelings. Happiness too. It is a separate mental state, but it is accompanied by sukha vedana, pleasant feelings. Here, when you're talking about experiencing the cittasaṅkhāra, it's more than just experiencing rapture and happiness. Other things as well. Then you begin to experience not only the rapture and happiness, you experience also sanya and other mental states. But here, of course, if we follow MN 44, then it should only be Vedana and Sanya. And then you tranquilize it. Even though when you stop breathing, you can still continue to experience the cittasaṅkhāra in the fourth jhana. You're not watching the breath, you're not aware of the breath anymore, but you can still be aware of what's happening in the mind. For tranquilizing the cittasaṅkhāra, this happens right from the beginning when you are practicing. Same for the previous one, experiencing cittasaṅkhāra. You experience cittasaṅkhāra right from the beginning when you're trying to watch your breath. Every now and then, you might be drawn away by unpleasant feelings, maybe aversion or disappointment or maybe you are drawn away by pleasant memories. Okay, this is at the beginning when you are trying to focus your mind before you reach the jhana. At that time also, you can also experience cittasaṅkhāra. You can experience all the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. You can also experience all the perceptions that are going on in your mind, right from the beginning, pre-jhanic state until the fourth jhana. When you tranquilize the cittasaṅkhāra, same, from the very beginning, before you reach the jhana, you are already trying to tranquilize the cittasaṅkhāra. Then it gets subtler and subtler and subtler. At the fourth jhana, it is tranquilized. It is fully tranquilized in Nirodha Samapatti. It is tranquilized only in respect of the Vedana, in the fourth jhana and in the arupas, because sanya is still there. You need to have sanya in order to perceive the infinity of space, the infinity of consciousness, and nothingness. You need to have sanya to be able to recognize that concept. So sanya is still there, but Vedana has already been tranquilized until it reaches upekha, I guess. But you are still doing it. You are still tranquilizing it. You are getting to be more and more subtle. In the fourth jhana also, you haven't reached that. You are still in the process of tranquilizing the cittasaṅkhāra in the fourth jhana and even in the arupas. Finally, you reach a goal in the Nirodha Samapatti when the cittasaṅkhāra is completely tranquilized. And of course, ultimately, when you get to Nibbana, none of these are already there. That is the ultimate tranquilization. Experiencing citta, citta here refers to the whole of your mental makeup. While you are trying to focus on your breath right from the beginning, inadvertently, will have to notice what's going on in the mind. Even though you have no concentration, you will know how restless the mind is, thinking of this and that, and all the reactions that are going on in your mind. You may not have the right view, but you notice all these things. You are experiencing the citta right from the beginning, even before you attain any jhanas. And you can continue to experience the citta until the fourth jhana. You can't do that in the arupas. You can't do any of these above exercises in the arupas. Because in the arupas, you're only aware of one thing. You're only aware of your object of meditation, which is either infinity of space, infinity of consciousness, or nothingness. You cannot be aware of anything else. Whereas while you're doing in the lower jhanas, in the form jhanas, you can be watching your breath, and at the same time, you can also be experiencing the citta, gladdening the citta, composing the citta, liberating the citta. All these things can be done while you are in the jhana. Gladdening the citta only happens until the first jhana because this is about joy. Composing the citta while watching your breath can happen until the third jhana, but it will continue. Still continue to compose your citta through the fourth jhana, through the arupas. In the Nirodha Samapatti, in the cessation of feeling and perception, you can't do anything. You cannot compose the citta because there's no citta. The citta has temporarily been suspended. Because if there's no sanya and vedana, how can there be consciousness? So the whole of the citta has been suspended at that time. Liberating the citta here refers to liberating the citta from various hindrances, defilements. From the very beginning, you are trying to abandon the hindrances. Once you abandon the hindrances, then you get samadhi. From there, you go on to the jhanas. At that time, you are liberating your mind step by step. From the first jhana, you go on to the second jhana, you must liberate the mind from vitakka, vichara. And from the second jhana, going on to the third jhana, you must liberate the mind from piti. You keep on liberating the mind from grosser states. When you get to the arupas, from infinity of space, you go the next step to infinity of consciousness. You have to let go of the infinity of space and go on to hold on to the infinity of consciousness. And from there, you have to progress to the next step. You have to let go of the infinity of consciousness and go on to nothingness. After that, you have to let go of the perception itself and go to that limbo state, neither perception nor non-perception. All these are about liberating the citta from grosser and grosser states. Finally, of course, this is the ultimate liberation, when the citta is liberated from all the asavas, cankers, or inflows. This is permanently liberated from them, not just temporary. While you are in the pre-jhanic state until the arūpas is all a temporary liberation. But when you attain arahantship, that is the ultimate liberation. As well as for this repeatedly observing impermanence and so forth, all of these can actually be done from the moment you have achieved some level of samadhi. Not necessarily until you attain the jhanas. It's even the pre-jhanic state. For example, I often tell people there are 3 levels of samadhi that can be attained through open awareness or open mindfulness practice. The first level is when you are still anchored to the 5 senses and you have a lot of restless thoughts. The thoughts are so close to one another that you cannot separate one from the other. You have no chance to actually acknowledge what sort of thought it is, one after another. But you are able to just come back to your senses and not get carried away by those thoughts. Those thoughts don't pull you away and you are not averse to them. You're accepting them. They come and go, never mind. You just step back and you're patiently enduring them, seeing them coming and going without being distracted or ruffled by them. So this is the first level of samadhi through open awareness. At that time, you can very clearly see anicca, dukkha, anatta. Correct. Everything is moving. Nothing is static. It's changing all the time. And it's suffering because you want the mind to be calm and peaceful and thought-free, but these things are all happening and it's beyond your control. Anatta. It's very, very obvious when you get to that state. When you are no longer ruffled by them, you're able to just step back and see them come and go. That can give you an insight into the 3 characteristics of the existence. In fact, I always tell people, it's better to be restless than to be sleepy. If you are restless and you can still be mindful of them, you can get an insight into the 3 characteristics. But if you are sleepy, it is very difficult even to keep awake. The next level of composure is when there is a gap between your thoughts. The thoughts are not so closely enmeshed together anymore. They are spaced apart. So you can actually clearly distinguish one thought from another thought. Initially cannot. It's just a whole jumble of thoughts. Now you can see that is the second level of composure. Then as you practice more and more, then the gaps become longer and longer. In the gaps itself, you are just being aware of the 5 senses. And then the thoughts come in. And that is a time when you can see very clearly cause, condition, and effect. What is the cause and condition for this thought to arise? That is a time when wisdom can arise because the mind is more composed. The third stage is when there are no more thoughts. Initially, it might be very interesting to see, wow, this thought arises because of this cause, arose because of this cause and this condition. You can see cause, condition, and effect so clearly. And it becomes very interesting. If you have the right wisdom, then the idea of not self becomes so very clear. There's no one there. All these things are happening due to cause, condition, and effect. The third level is no more thoughts. You begin groping in the dark. Now no more thoughts. What to watch? You cannot see cause, condition anymore. So that's a time when you start to watch the 5 aggregates. These are the actual so-called ultimate realities. Thoughts are just activities of the mind. Thoughts are mostly concerned about concepts and ideas, past or even about the present things that are happening. But when you go to a thought-free stage, there's a time when you need to be able to identify the 4 mental aggregates and then to be able to see them in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta, and cause and condition and effect. All of these exercises in the 4th tetrad, they can be done the moment your mind becomes composed. Composed means you are no longer distracted or ruffled by extraneous thoughts, feelings, or perceptions. From then on, you can already see. You can observe impermanence, you can observe fading away, you can see them ceasing. You can continue to do that even in the 4th jhana, because in the 4th jhana, you have no breath. You cannot be watching the breath anymore, but you can still see all these things happening in the 4 aggregates. And of course, The ultimate cessation happens only when you attain Nibbana. That's the time that there's a cessation of all saṅkhāras. This is the same for the others. This is how I understand the whole process of how Ānāpānassati is practiced. As I said, it is not a linear progression of practice, but all these elements are arranged according to the 4 satipatthanas, not according to the order of practice. So you can actually do the last one, vipassana, even in the first tetrad. Initially, I had this idea that in MN 43, because it's referring to a corpse, kāyasaṅkhāra could mean the overall formations of the body, not just the breath. But on second thoughts, because these are actually a comparison between bhikkhu who has attained the cessation of perception and feeling and that of a corpse, then I guess it should be the same, because there must be a common denominator for comparison. In the case of MN 118, of course, it's the breath, because it makes sense to say that it's a breath. You tranquilize the breath so that you can get into the 4th jhāna through the practice of Ānāpānassati. It's the same for cittasaṅkhāra in MN 43. At first, I thought it was the overall formations of the mind, but I think I should agree that it's just feeling and perception, as it is a comparison. And also for 118, it's not just feeling, but it's feeling and perception, because initially we only had rapture and happiness, and then after that you experience the cittasaṅkhāra. If it's only talking about experience, feeling, then it's already covered in the first two. But here, in addition to feeling, you also experience the sanya. Initially, it's only the rapture and the happiness that you experience, and now you experience also the neutral feeling, especially when you get into the 3rd jhāna. The 3rd jhāna, there's a lot of neutral feelings, although there's still sukha in the mind. When you get to the 4th jhāna, there's still perception and there's a neutral feeling. Okay, that's all that I have to say for this. So, any questions?
Bhante, if one goes beyond, ultimately there's been nothing. Is this nothingness similar to the Mahayana teaching of the Heart Sutra?
No, not the same. In the Heart Sutra, the kong there refers to empty of any permanent, independent entity. It's different because in that sutra, it is talking about anatta. It's another way of expressing anatta. You look at anatta in terms of the void. It's void or empty of any independent existence. It is dependent on causes and conditions, right? Therefore, it's empty. Empty of what? Empty of an independent existence. Okay, next please.
I would like to ask about the cessation of perception and feeling. Can Bhante explain on this? If a bhikkhu who attained this cessation of perception and feeling, how is that state? Because Bhante said at that state, vijnana is subsided together with perception and feeling. So what is remaining for this area? What is the difference between this state and nibbana?
Oh, it's different. This is only the temporary suspension of the citta. There is no consciousness and there's no object. Now, nibbana is a state. Here we are talking about what happens to that person. Right? That person who is meditating, his citta gets suspended. But nibbana is a state. It's a state just like the sky is to a person who has eyes. A person who has eyes can represent one who has the eye of wisdom, one of the people who have already had a glimpse of nibbana. Okay, whereas those who are blind and cannot see the sky are like the rest of us who are not yet enlightened. according to Theravada philosophy, Nibbana is an objective state. When a Sotapanna has his first glimpse of Nibbana, it means that there is consciousness there which perceives Nibbana as an external object. There is a simile in Kosambi Sutta, where there is this conversation between a few monks, and they were conversing about the law of dependent origination. And then there was one part where it says, Bhava Nirodha Nibbanam. Bhava Nirodho Nibbanam. The cessation of becoming is Nibbana. And then the monk asked, do you know and see this experientially? Not through theory, not through faith, not through hearsay and so forth. And he said, yes. Which means to say that he has experienced Nibbana. Correct or not? Do you know and see this experientially? Right, then say, in that case, are you an Arahant? Then he says, no, I'm not an Arahant. And so they went on the conversation. And then finally, he said, give you a simile. It's like a person who is walking in a desert and he comes across a well. And the well doesn't have a bucket. But he gets to the well and he can see the water inside there, but he cannot taste it. He can see only, he cannot taste. So that's what the lower enlightened beings, from Sotapan to Sakatagami to Anagami, they only can see, they cannot taste. They cannot taste Nibbana, they can only see only. Whereas the Arahant can taste Nibbana. The Arahant is like one with the bucket. You can go in and take out the water and drink it. So that's the difference. From the Theravada perspective, Nibbana is an objective reality. Okay?
So on this attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling is the taste by Arahant and the non-returners. One of the tastes by Arahant and non-returners. So it's a temporary state and it will withdraw from the state.
Okay, you see, the thing is that the attainment of the glimpse of Nibbana that was obtained by the three sekas, the three nis, this is a result of fruition of Vipassana practice. The result of the Nirodha Samapatti need not necessarily be wisdom. It's a type of samadhi. Samadhi need not necessarily have wisdom in it. But there are many passages in the suttas which say that when a person comes out from this Nirodha Samapatti, then there is wisdom and he is liberated from his inflows. He comes out from this, he sees his wisdom and he becomes an Arahant. So it seems that it's a very deep concentration. When you come out of it, then you can see very clearly and bring you to become an Arahant.
Coming back to this particular Mahāvedalla Sutta, we have two cases of one who is dead and one who has feeling and perception passed away, having the bodily formation, verbal and mental formation. But it's mentioned that in these two different cases, one has no heat, no vitality, and all his faculties are all broken out, whereas the other one still have heat and vitality, and his faculties are very clear. I was wondering, is this has something to do with the karma that make you cannot die, or is it something related to the jhanas, to the states of jhāna and the arūpa?
Yeah, it's related to that. Remember I was telling you about Dharma therapy where in Burma, where in some meditation centers, they encourage people to focus on the painful sensations, especially if that painful sensation is a result of past ailments and physiological problems which have not really been uprooted. When they do that, in some cases, when the samadhi is really very strong, then the pain disappears completely, sometimes very dramatically, like an explosion, and then the tumor is gone or they are completely healed from their illness. Mahasi Sayadaw explains it in the way that I said the other day, that it is because when you have reached that level of samadhi and insight, there is this cittaja rūpa, mind-born matter, the matter that is produced through a very purified and concentrated or focused mind. And this is what heals the body. almost like an antibody. Is able to heal the body of its ailment. Probably it's because of that. Probably because of the strength of samadhi that his faculties become clear. It's also very apparent when you meet a yogi who has just come out from an intensive retreat. You will see that person is very different, right? His complexion is very calm and clear and serene, and you can feel that peace around him. Right? This is the power of meditation.
It seems to be clear to me that by the cessations of the feeling and perception, the breath just stops, right, as you have described. So that is a physically stop, but not perceived to be stopped. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. That's why there's this comparison with the dead person. The dead person physically stopped, right? Not perceived to have stopped.
All right. And in your last slide, you described the tetrads of the Ānāpānassati. Is it necessary that we have to follow all the tetrads as described here, or it can be skipped? For example, we go straight to the last part to discern of the impermanence, the cessations, or whatever it is, to attain the final, the roadmap.
Yeah, didn't you see in my slide, I showed you that they can all be done concurrently. They are not in a linear sequential manner.
Okay.
You can start anywhere.
Okay. Because I read that Nibbanahood can be attained even without jhanas.
Not really. I mean, it depends on what sort of jhanas you're talking about. You know, during the Buddha's time, all the non-bhikkhus attained to various levels of enlightenment by listening to the Dhamma. They didn't do any prior jhanic practice before. Right? But they had some sort of jhana. They had a low-end jhana while they were listening to the Buddha. Yeah, because the Buddha said in the Anguttara Nikaya, it's called Nivarana Avarana Sutta, that he says that when a person is listening 100% to a Dhamma talk, then his 5 hindrances are abandoned and he is developing the 7 factors of enlightenment to fulfillment.
Exactly. Thank you.
In the sutta, it is mentioned that the Buddha got his enlightenment through Ānāpānassati. So my question is, did he go through all the tetrads, or he got enlightenment on one of the levels and didn't do all the 4 tetrads?
Well, you see, there's no direct evidence to say that the Buddha used Ānāpānassati to get enlightened.
I thought it was written in the scripture.
That is a popular belief. In the sutta, he talks only about developing the divine eye, right? And then looking at how beings arise and pass away from one existence to another, correct? And then after that, he went into the 4 Noble Truths, and then that's how he eradicated his cankers, right? His asavas. That's how it is stated. But the actual meditation that he used to get to that stage was not mentioned in that sutta. But having said that, let's look at how the Bodhisattva's sequence of practice. Now, after he decided to leave home, he went to look for a teacher. He went to study or practice with Alara Kalama, his first teacher, who taught him to attain until the 3rd arūpa. And that was as far as he got. So within a short time, Gautama also managed to get to the same attainment as his teacher, and his teacher was so happy and decided to make him a co-teacher, right? But then he said that this is not what I'm looking for. This is not me to liberation. It only brings me to rebirth in the Brahma realm. So he left and went looking around for another teacher. It was called Uddaka Ramaputta. Uddaka Ramaputta taught until the 4th arūpa, but he himself had not attained. He taught according to what his teacher taught. And Gautama also very soon attained the 4th arūpa. And so Uddaka Ramaputta was very humble and very genuine person. He was so happy and pleased, and he said, wow, you are fantastic. Why don't you take over all my students? You'll be the main teacher. Nowadays, you know, when the student becomes better than the teacher will get jealous, right? But no, this guy was very, very genuine. But then Gotama refused and said, oh, this is not what I'm looking for. I don't want to be reborn in the Brahma world. So he went to do his self-modification for many years, according to the scriptures, 6 years or so. And then finally, he almost died because of self-modification. He was so weak, he fell into a stream and almost died. And then after that, he remembered that when he was young, and he was a kid, and his father was involved in a plowing festival, he was sitting under the rose apple tree, and he attained the first jhāna spontaneously by himself. And he said, well, perhaps that could be the way to what I'm looking for. So then he realized that he was too weak to do that, so he had to feed himself first, get some strength before he could do Ānāpānassati. So after that, he did Ānāpānassati. I guess based on that story, they say that using Ānāpānassati, he attained liberation. All right. The interesting thing is that in the Visuddhimagga, it is now stated that in order to get the arūpas, you need to get the jhanas first. After you finish the jhana, then only you go to the arūpas. Correct or not? But you see, very strangely, Gotama got the arūpas first before he got the jhana. Right or not? He didn't go to learn Ānāpānassati from Alala Karama. He just learned to get the third arūpa. And then after that, he backtracked and then started all over again from the jhana practice. Okay?
So that means he went through the 4 tetrads to get...
I don't know exactly what he did, but then in Ānāpānassati Saṅyutta, he did say that there's great fruit in the practice of Ānāpānassati Samadhi. And then he talks about these 4 tetrads, and he talks about going to the arūpas and going to Nirodha Samapatti and then getting final liberation.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Bhante on this MN43 about people who have cessation and feeling. Because his body, verbal and mental formation have already ceased, but still have this vitality, heat, and faculty. These 3 things is referring to what?
Oh, these are coming. He says heat and vitality, right?
Heat, vitality, and faculty.
Yeah, all are still there. So these are still functioning because he's still alive. This the faculty of life is still there. It's just that he has stopped the normal processes.
There's something to maintain this, right?
Yeah.
It will be a body to maintain the heat. If there's nothing there, so how to have heat?
There is something there. There's still Divitindriya, the life faculty. Or when the Buddha was accosted by Mara, and Mara sort of cornered him to pass away quickly because he said, you promised that you will pass away when you have established your Sangha and your 4 assemblies. All right, so now your 4 assemblies are already complete. Now, when are you going to pass away? So the Mara cornered him, and since he had made a promise, he had to keep his promise. And so he decided to release his cittasaṅkhāra, which means to say it is the will of wanting to stay alive. So probably that cittasaṅkhāra is still there.
I'm a little confused because I had read earlier MN 111, that is Anupada Sutta. In this sutta, section number 15 and 16, he's talking about the base of infinite consciousness.
Yes.
I'm just reading that part very quickly. Again, bhikkhus, by completely surmounting the base of infinite consciousness, aware that there is nothing, Sariputta entered upon and abided in the base of nothingness. Now, number 16, and the states in the base of nothingness, the perception of the base of nothingness and the unification of mind, the contact, feeling, perception, volition, and mind, these states were defined by him one by one as they occurred. Known to him, those states arose. Known they were present. Known they disappeared. He understood thus, and with the cultivation of that, he confirmed that there is. So it goes on. So basically, my question is that in this base of nothingness, he has described contact, feeling, perception, volition, and mind.
Right.
I'm confused about it.
Right. So the way it's understood is that yatha bhutang you say as it really, that as it really is an English translation of Yatha Bhuta. Yatha Bhuta means as it has occurred. Bhuta is a past participle, right? So when you say in English as it is, it seems to be in the present. When you talk about Yatha Bhuta, it's not really in the present. It had occurred as it has occurred. So what happens is that when he is in the base of infinite space, or is it infinite consciousness? Yeah, when he's in that space, he is totally absorbed in it and is not aware of what's happening outside. Because if he begins to be aware of all these mental states, then he's no longer absorbed in the infinity of space or infinity of consciousness, correct? Or nothingness. He's no longer absorbed, he's looking at something else. So how it is understood is that he actually comes out of it and looks back at what had happened while he was absorbed. And that's what happens to us when we look at mental states. It's always one step behind. You're angry first, and then you're aware that you were angry. You think first, and you're aware that you have wandered off. It happened first, and you're just split second behind. Okay, that's how it's understood. Okay.
Regarding the workings of Saṅkhāra and the result of Ānāpānassati meditation and Satipatthana Vipassana meditation the same. Is the observation of them the same? Kāya, vacī, and what nikaya can be found for this Satipatthana Vipassana workings of the Saṅkhāra?
I'm not quite sure what you are trying to ask. Can you be more precise?
The working and the results of the Saṅkhāra in Ānāpānassati meditation regarding kāya, vacī, and the result and the working all the same with the Satipatthana Vipassana meditation. So in observation, are they all the same?
Not the same. Satipatthana has got a different way of looking at things. Ānāpānassati has got a different way of looking at things, a different process. Although the Buddha said in Ānāpānassati Sutta, MN 118, that if one practices the Ānāpānassati Sutta properly, one is also practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And he equates the first tetrad to kāyanupassana, the second tetrad to vedananupassana or contemplation of feelings, and the third tetrad to observation of the mind or mental states, and the last tetrad to observation of the Dhamma. Okay, that's how it is stated in the Ānāpānassati Sutta, MN 118. All right, hope that answers the question.
Are the results the same?
Well, if you practice the Satipatthana properly, then the Buddha says you are practicing the 7 factors of enlightenment. When you're practicing the 7 factors of enlightenment, this will lead to liberation.
So, what nikaya can be found here regarding this Satipatthana Vipassana Saṅkhāra?
Well, in the Satipatthana Sutta itself, there's not much reference to the term Saṅkhāra, except for the first part of Ānāpānassati Sutta. Only the first tetrad is mentioned. And then also in the Dhammanupassana, where the Buddha talks about the 5 aggregates, that's the Saṅkhāra. So in Dhammanupassana, under observation of the 5 aggregates, you will find Saṅkhāra there, but it's very short. He says, this is Saṅkhāra, and this is how Saṅkhāra arises. This is how Saṅkhāra ceases. That's all. No details given.
But the result in practice?
The result is liberation.
The same lah.
Yeah, of course, you have to look at it in terms of the anicca, dukkha, anatta to get there. Because there's one sutta that I show you in the extract, it's called Tatiya Samadhi Sutta, and it talks about how to practice vipassana. You have to look at Saṅkhāras.
Can you please repeat the sutta again?
Tatiya Samadhi Sutta. Yeah, section 3. Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Force, Sutta number 94.
The Vipassana Saṅkhāra observation.
Yeah.